So hello and welcome to the presentation of the Luxembourg Web Archive. My name is Ben Els, and as the digital curator of the Luxembourg Web Archive, I am responsible for the content of the Web Archive at the National Library of Luxembourg, and together with my colleague Yves Maurer, who is the technical manager of the Web Archive, we take care of the technical and content side. So our mission is quite simple: to save the Luxembourg web from extinction, because as you all know, the internet is ephemeral, it is always changing, it's also a unique source of information and the reflection of a diverse society, and therefore needs to be preserved. So if we look at the timeline of our web archiving program in Luxembourg, in 2004, the base law for Luxembourg web legal deposit was voted, but only in 2009 did we see the inclusion of websites in the legal deposit ordinance, which specified the National Library as the archiving institution for websites as an extension of the legal deposit law of media published on paper. So if we talk about the Luxembourg web, we are looking at different areas of interest. So first of all, we try to archive all websites published in the .lu top-level domain, all websites published by a natural person or legal entity in Luxembourg, so on the territory of the country. We try to archive websites hosted on servers in Luxembourg, and moreover, we are also interested in websites published by non-resident Luxembourg citizens, or in general, international websites with relevance to Luxembourg. So as a combination, these areas make up the legal deposit and national heritage aspects of the Luxembourg web. As for copyright, there is an exception for research and private studies from terminals on the premise of the institution, and publications collected under legal deposit become the property of the institution and can be made available to the public. So the Luxembourg Web Archive is only accessible, only available from within the National Library. And in the future, we may see a clear exception for text and data mining, but for now, that is not yet the case. As for deletion requests, we have to say that no content of the Luxembourg Web Archive will be permanently deleted, but we might withdraw access to certain contents from the browsable web archive. So we have had very few of these requests, but that is possible. And there's also an exception in GDPR, which states that the treatment of publications may include their archiving in regards to public interest for scientific, statistical, or historical reasons. So therefore, our position on this is the right to be forgotten is not absolute and does not supersede the right for public information. On the other hand, there are the robots.txt exclusions, which instruct web robots such as search engines, harvesters, or web scrapers on how to crawl a website and what parts should be indexed or not. And usually we respect the robots.txt settings as well. So back to our timeline, if we take a step back in time, in 2005, we elaborated the proof of concept with the Heritrix crawler, and there was also a white paper written for the BNL by Hanso Archives. Along with that, we had site visits at the National Library of France, at the BNF, and the INA, the National Audiovisual Institute, in 2009 and 2015. And all of that preparation resulted in our first domain crawl in 2016. So if we talk about the .lu top-level domain in the year 2000, we had around 10,000 registered .lu domains, and by 2018, that number had gone up to 100,000 with an increasing tendency. And unfortunately, that tendency is also increasing in the other direction. So roughly over the course of 3 years, we realized that over 21,000 domains that were registered at one point were no longer available at a later point, so had disappeared from the live web. So you could say that roughly a fifth of the .lu domain has disappeared within 3 years. So even though the .lu top level domain is quite small, the task at hand is still very complex, and we need to use our resources in the best way possible to cover as much as possible from the Luxembourg web. So we use different methods for this. So first of all, we do domain crawls, so 4 times a year. This is our most extensive approach. We archive all .lu domains plus all other lists that we determined over the years at once. This is the broad foundation of the Luxembourg web because we capture the most information at once. Then after that, we have event collections. So surrounding events of national importance, we try to capture as much as information as possible over a limited period of time. So typical examples of this would be election campaigns or maybe natural disasters. And then lastly, we have thematic collections, which we would like to focus on more in the upcoming years, where we will be working with evolving lists. So the lists will grow over time. We are looking at collaborative development with internal and external contributors. And we also want to use adapted methods for different types of websites. So for instance, one of the first thematic collections that we have running now is Luxembourg News Media, where we have daily, weekly or monthly crawls, and all the crawls are adapted to the different news media sites, so we don't miss any new information. So event and thematic collections are commonly known as special collections, and we also use different tools to build and to curate these collections. So the domain crawls are operated in collaboration with Internet Archive, and the event and thematic collections are operated, mostly operated in-house using Archivit, Conifer, and WeGet. About the domain crawls, so the procedure we follow 4 times a year is the following. So first of all, we compile the seed lists, all of the .lu domains. We receive the list from the National Registrar, all state websites, and the complete list of hosts we receive from the National Computing Center. Then we have additional lists that we determined ourselves by research, or that comes from different contributors. So all non.lu sites, so all websites from other top-level domains, and also websites we determined from servers hosted in Luxembourg using geo-IP analysis. And then on a more time-sensitive aspect, we also add high-priority seeds, which are usually linked to a recent event collection, so that we get another high-quality capture of really important websites in the domain crawl. Then there are different phases of crawling. There's a test crawl, a main crawl, and patch crawls, all done by Internet Archive. We receive daily reports in which we can identify unusual patterns or data accumulation and adjust the crawls accordingly. The shipment is done with external disks, and everything is uploaded to our Open Wayback machine, which is the home of the Luxembourg Web Archive. For the relationship between event collections and thematic collections, the idea is here that the research that we do surrounding an event collection, for instance, an election campaign, will serve as the basis for a thematic collection. So in this case, politics and society. And then on the other hand, with the evolving lists and by building and expanding the thematic collection, we already have the basis for the next event. So with the politics collection, we have the basis for the next election campaigns. And all of this research, of course, flows into the domain crawls. So this helps us improve the lists for the domain crawl. It helps us improve our understanding of the Luxembourg web and the coverage in general. So this is a better service for the readers, but also for the website owners and content creators if we follow these 3 methods of covering the Luxembourg web. Back to the timeline, so we had the first domain crawl in 2016, and in 2017, there was a team hiring. We were able to expand the team. So that makes the two of us, one technical manager from the IT department. So that's my colleague Yves, and one digital curator from the Heritage Collection department. That's myself. And between us, we share different objectives and different objectives and tasks. So from the strategy, collection, policy, legal aspects, where we draft contracts and look, we had a tender last year for our web archiving services. On the operational side and technical side, we kind of split our jobs for running the crawls and running the system administration and user engagement. So over our website, press releases, conferences, and so on. Usually we share this work together between the two of us. So with that, we get back to the timeline. So also in 2017, we were able to join the IIPC, the International Internet Preservation Consortium. 2018, we joined the Digital Preservation Coalition. And in 2020, the Web Archive was included in our long-term preservation system, in long-term preservation program. And in the same year, we were able to launch webarchive.lu. So that is our information and collaboration platform, which we try to keep as simple as possible. So you can see we have different categories, what we do, how it works, and what we have. And under what we have, you will find the special collections which are presented here. So as I mentioned, different election campaigns, but also events such as the death of our late Grand Duke Jean, which was a really important event for the whole country, or natural disasters such as the tornado that struck the country in 2019, which was also quite exceptional. Then you have different thematic collections such as the Commons and Schools, Luxembourg Blocks, cultural centers. Of course, COVID-19 is a very big event collection, but also festivals in Luxembourg. And as I mentioned before, news media is a running thematic collection. Then you also have curiosities, which are more on the fun side of things, articles about the National Library of Luxembourg. And on a really positive note, in 2020, we had the birth of Prince Charles of Luxembourg. So a bit more about the event collections. We had quite a few elections between 2017 and 2019. And the biggest collections we did here were for the local and national elections, respectively, both in terms of data and seats collected. And as you can see, the number of seats is quite high for the local and national elections. That is why, because we did news media tagging. So all news media articles were collected individually, and we tagged every article in different categories. So for instance, political party, municipality, topic, publication date, names, and votes received. And this allows us to do different kinds of analysis with any of these factors. So for instance, here we have all the articles of the 2017 local elections. We have all the topics from the different articles. We have all the political parties. Here we have all the websites, all the newspaper websites, and all the municipalities. And with that, we can, for example, see what number of articles was published about a certain political party on one website, what website published most articles about a political party, and what were the municipalities that played the biggest roles in those articles. And we could continue this analysis to see what were the politicians that were most mentioned in all the articles, and does this reflect the votes that they received in the end, or what was the relationship between the different news media in that direction. Then we have our COVID-19 collection, which is the biggest event collection we have done so far. As you can imagine, it is still ongoing. And we started crawling on March 16th of 2020, which was maybe a bit late because on that day, we already had 81 known cases in Luxembourg. So we kind of knew that the a pandemic had arrived in Luxembourg, but of course no one had any idea of how life-changing this topic would become, and how important this collection would be. So we started right away with a call for participation to the media and general public, which had really good feedback, really good results early in the pandemic. We also had started with daily checks of all online news media and live tickers, so the live news updates on all the websites, and we were able to set up an additional domain crawl for the end of April, which allowed us to continue on that frequency for the years after that, and we got up to 4 domain crawls as you could say as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So by building this collection, we start with the question where to look. So we follow the news, we look at social media. You have to ask the experts, ask for help from the public, and you follow the clues. And what we find with that are different areas from the Luxembourg web, different areas of interest where we can find seeds for our collection. So government and administration, of course, public institutions were really important. Healthcare, obviously, what was the response in the cultural center? What were the new measures in the education center? So homeschooling, all of these changes. Several interest groups had a lot of publications around the health situation. Unions and professional associations were, of course, very active. What was the general response in economy, and also new websites that were created just for this topic. So solidarity initiatives, support for struggling businesses, buy local initiatives were all formed in the beginning of the pandemic. And if you say that with event collection, you want to cover all facets of a topic, if you want to capture as much information as possible, you also have to try to capture information from different communities, languages, and beliefs that are maybe underrepresented generally in news media, and that is also quite difficult to find their web presence, and that is why the participation of the public and different interest groups is really important in that aspect as well. So as I mentioned, the collection is still ongoing. As many of you, we would also like to know when COVID-19 will finally be over, but for now we still continue crawling, although at a much slower pace than in the beginning. So up until now, we have captured 4.1 terabytes of data, 28,000 seeds. That is due to the fact that in the beginning, we were still capturing individual news articles before we started daily and weekly crawls of all news media. So we still have a big bulk of individual news articles for analysis at a later point, maybe. And in general, we focused on websites and Twitter profiles. So in an event collection with an unknown duration and unknown data capacity, we decided to basically ignore social media, which is a difficult choice to do, but this allows us to have many more captures of websites, and in this case Twitter profiles. So we have a lot of seeds that were captured daily, weekly, and monthly, which would not have been possible if we had tried to include Facebook and Instagram into this collection as well. So we have a few seeds, we have a few YouTube channels, but very little data is saved from these sources. You can find all the information about the collection on our website, and the seed list is also available for download here as well. So as I mentioned, we had this call for participation, which has a really good response. In the beginning, a lot of people sent in their websites, and that is something that we try to underline on Web Archive LU in general. So there is a very easy to use form where you can add your website, add some descriptions, put it into a thematic category, or just simply send it by email. so that website owners and content creators know that their content is saved and we can add their websites to the lists. Moreover, we also present articles and interviews that were published about the Luxembourg Web Archive, which you can also find on the homepage. And we also illustrate events that we organize, such as the Content at Risk Roundtable in 2020. And of course, now with the course of the pandemic, we are looking at having more of these events back in the National Library. And as a last point, I'm going to talk about access and research. So about, access for researchers. So for now, the access is, of course, regulated by the Luxembourg Legal Deposit, which only allows access to archive data and the Wayback Machine on the premises of the National Library. But what we want to do is to conclude contracts with research partners, which would allow them to have data analysis by shipping hard drives, and which would allow remote access to our Wayback Machine, which would make their work a lot easier and give them better access to our web archive, which is absolutely the future for things to go. So with that, I thank you for your time. And this concludes the presentation of the Luxembourg Web Archive. Thank you.